Like and subscribe right now, or this spider will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
10 scariest things they didn't teach you about ancient Egypt. Egypt's civilization dates back to more than 5,000 years. Today, this marvel of a country houses a lot of antiquities, as well as a pool of mesmerizing tourist destinations such as the pyramids and ancient tombs. It is true that the rich history of Egypt has created a tapestry of treasures unmatched by any other, both culturally and archeologically. However, they do have a few things they don't want people to find out. Here are but a few of them. Number 10. Mummy cholera. Mummy cholera isn't exactly an official variant of the disease. However, it neatly sums up what happened during a certain outbreak in the early 90s. Augustus Wood's paper mill went belly up when his not-so-wise attempt to maintain production levels caused an outbreak of cholera among the people, and the culprit used mummy wrappings. During the Civil War, Wood's paper mill was struggling to keep up with the market's demand due to the strained import of raw materials used to manufacture paper. He needed to come up with a strategy fast, just to keep things up and running, and he found the perfect substitute raw material, used mummy wrappings, which were very plentiful at the time. To his eyes, he saw no difference between the rags that were used to wrap dead bodies with the paper he was producing. As an entrepreneur, he chose to keep the profits rolling in, rather than the health and safety of his customers, and imported as many mummy wraps as possible. It sounded like a good idea at the time, and there wasn't any real financial implications. He only halted his production when a cholera outbreak was linked to people using these rags to wrap meat. The lengths businessmen are willing to go to are still unfathomable, and to think this was way back in the day. What do you think they are willing to do today?
Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works.
Number 9. Slaves killed for masters. Ancient Egyptians are well known for their very strange relationship with death. They were very obsessed with life after death, thus the process of mummification was developed. They were so good at it that even today, we still don't know how exactly they did it. However, they also glorified life and were very intent on living a fulfilling one. But when looking at how they treated their slaves, you'll get the impression that they care more about the dead a teeny bit more than the living. Many slaves were sacrificed and were sealed inside the tombs of their well-off Egyptian masters. This was done to ensure that their masters had servants to look after their needs even in the afterlife. This practice was reserved for those who were wealthy and prominent enough. Most slaves took to the grisly task wholeheartedly and generally posed no objections. They were honored to serve their masters in this life and the next. This only shows how intrinsic this practice is to ancient Egyptian culture. Number 8. The Wrath of the Sun God. Egypt is significant for its diversity of deities from Osiris to Shu. Foremost among them is Ra, the sun god, who was thought to be the greatest of them all. Early on in their civilization, Egypt declared their servitude to Ra. He is the king of all the other gods and an advisor to the pharaoh. The gravest offense anyone could commit was against the sun god. The crimes ranged from disrespecting the dignity of the sun god to vandalizing the temple. These were unforgivable crimes that were punishable by death, often by being burned alive. The practice of burning people as punishment was very uncommon among Egyptians and was solely set aside for capital crimes as those against the sun god. To be burned alive is considered one of the most horrible forms of punishment you can give to an ancient Egyptian. They believed that to be reborn in the afterlife, your body needs to be intact, thus the practice of mummification. By burning the bodies of criminals, it meant that their souls would have no vessels for them to be reborn into, leaving them to wander in the void for all eternity. Number 7. Beating confessions out of people. Ancient Egypt had a well-stipulated set of laws that people should obey and a structured government system that ensured the enforcement of the law. Just as with the majority of other countries, the system was not necessarily fair. This is because ancient Egyptian lawmen weren't really shy about using torture to get confessions out of suspected criminals, with the preferred method being a hefty beating. Torture someone enough and I guarantee you'll get an admission of guilt, even from an innocent man. Here's the thing, it's not only suspected criminals who were subjected to torture. If you witness a crime in ancient Egypt, better make sure you have an excellent memory and remember everything that you've witnessed. If If not, to the torturer you go, and he will use pain to make you remember forgotten information the hard way. Pain does have a way of making even the strongest admit to whatever accusations just to make it stop. This was no different in the case of ancient Egyptians, as many admitted to guilt just to stop the pain. It is statistically impossible to quantify how many were wrongfully convicted due to this brutal legal procedure. Number 6. Guilty until proven innocent. Suspected criminals are always presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's just the norm. Well, in today's standards at least. Ancient Egypt adopted an absurd form of normalcy, whereby if you were suspected of committing a crime, you are automatically presumed guilty unless proven otherwise. To make matters worse, the burden of proving the accused was innocent falls to the accused himself. A tall order, especially if you remember our last entry regarding torture. This way of thinking definitely made sure that judicial procedures were dealt with really quickly, but sacrificing the freedom and often the life of an innocent man in the process seems not worth it. For a civilization thought to have had a fairly advanced legal system, this was pretty much backwards. Although judges did try to call everything down the middle, this preconception of guilt will always lean heavily towards a conviction. So, if you were a fall guy in ancient Egypt, chances are you'll find yourself in jail or worse, executed. Number 5. Weird birth control. Despite common knowledge, birth control practices have been dated back to thousands of years ago. There is actually evidence of this from ancient Romans, who used sheep intestines as contraceptives. In other words, they used sausage wrappers to wrap their sausages. Nowadays, the use of contraceptives is a normal occurrence. Most of these modern methods sound rather reasonable if you compare them to the methods used by ancient Egyptians. It was believed that crocodile dung mixed with honey was a pretty good spermicide. The two were to be mixed and plastered inside the intimate parts of a woman to prevent pregnancies. And believe it or not, it actually worked. But not in the way they were intended to work. Jamming a load of crap up a woman's lady parts understandably caused a lot of infections, and it's believed that these infections were actually the reason for a woman not getting pregnant. It's either that, or the aroma of crocodile dung isn't actually conducive to a romantic night between a man and a woman. Number 4. Ancient Egyptian curses. If there's something that really screams ancient Egypt, it's definitely the curses that kept explorers away from tombs. Many Hollywood movies are based on Egyptian belief in cursed tombs. We will not debate whether or not curses are real or just children's folktales, but it is a fact that very mysterious things have followed those who dare to ignore the warnings of an ancient curse and desecrated the tombs. There is a famous legend of the aftermath of the excavation of King Tut's grave. The legend claims that 26 people went out to explore the tomb, and when they had finished, a mysterious disease spread to all of them. The disease claimed the lives of 6 members, including the expedition leader who succumbed to a blood infection. Scientists shut down the rumors of curses being associated with this researcher's death, claiming that only 6 out of the 26 were affected. Despite what you may think of curses, Egyptians did put them on tombs to ward off would-be thieves and looters, and believed that they worked. They did so with the hope of keeping the dead safe, as well as keeping his valuables intact for use in the afterlife. Number 3. Mummification. We all know very well the fact that ancient Egyptians mummified the dead and buried them in tombs. However, do you know what the process of mummification entails? Mummification is an age-old practice that involves the preservation of a dead body. Normally, you'd think this process would begin immediately after death, which isn't the case. The dead body would be left to rot for a few days, so that kinky embalmers wouldn't take advantage of them. Afterwards, the body would be washed clean. Then, the drilling would begin between the nose and the skull for them to scoop out the brain. It would then be discarded, as they believed that the brain was worthless after death. This didn't apply to other body parts though. They would remove the lungs, intestines, kidneys, and liver and preserve them in containers. The heart would also be removed and later carefully placed back into the body. A variety of salts and other preservatives would be put into and on the body to dehydrate it, ensuring better preservation. The entire process usually lasts 40 days. Finally, the body would be covered in oil and wrapped in linen and later put away into a sarcophagus. Mummification is truly one of the most elaborate death rituals of all time. And just so you know, the process I described is mostly based on speculation. The fact is, we still don't know how exactly the ancient Egyptians did it. And with that, it's now time for today's best pick. Today's photo was sent to us by a subscriber, so if you come across a photo online and want to know more details about it, just send it over to us. We might even feature it in a future video. Number 2. Mummified animals. Following the history of ancient Egypt, it is common to hear that prominent Egyptians were buried with their treasures and even slaves. These artifacts and slaves are believed to serve their masters in the afterlife. However, it's not only humans who received the full mummification treatment. Animals were also mummified and put in tombs on their own. The range of animals that were mummified was rather large. It included hippopotamuses, falcons, dogs, and of course, cats. This was done as a way to honor their valued pets to ensure their journey to the afterlife. This is a clear indication of how ancient Egyptian culture looked at animals. There is also evidence of some using this practice as a sacrificial ritual to the gods. One tomb was found with over 8 million mummified dogs inside. It seems like they were part of a cult where they were nurtured and later sacrificed to the god Anubis. Number 1. Equality between genders. Compared to other ancient civilizations, women in ancient Egypt fared much better. They enjoyed equal rights to men, which was unheard of in other kingdoms at the time. Many regions, even in the West, were adamant in upholding the so-called superiority of men, considering women as inferior beings. Women were free to become rulers and become breadwinners and even choose who to marry. However, this was only applicable to women of high stature and definitely don't apply to slaves. Other nations were terrified of the power, freedom, and authority Egyptian women were given as it clashed with their own misogynist beliefs. Cleopatra, in fact, was considered to be one of the most powerful and influential pharaohs of all time. Which of these facts fascinated you the most? Let us know down below in the comments, will you? Smash the like button, and if you still haven't, click subscribe as well as the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and again, see you in the next video.